Her voice cracked beneath the lonely glow of the streetlight, trembling like a cornered animal. She backed away from me, steps unsteady, clutching her phone as if it were the only thing keeping her sane. "If you take one more step, I swear I'm calling the police," she whispered, breath sharp and broken. "I mean it, Ethan. I'm not joking anymore." That was the first time I saw myself the way she saw me, not as a quiet admirer, not as a harmless nobody who just wanted someone to notice him, but as a threat. A shadow. A mistake she couldn't escape from. And the worst part? She wasn't wrong. That night was the breaking point, the moment everything in my life fractured permanently. But to understand how I got there, you have to see where it really began, long before I ever stepped into that hallway. Long before I mistook fantasy for fate. Long before I ruined everything. Her name was Maya Alder, and the first time she walked into the bookstore where I worked, it felt like someone cracked open the world and let the sun spill into a place it didn't belong. She moved with a softness that seemed almost unreal. She smiled at strangers like it cost her nothing. She spoke gently, asked people how their day was, and somehow made it sound like she genuinely cared. She didn't breeze through life like someone unaware of her beauty. She glowed quietly, softly, completely unaware of the effect she had on the room around her. I was shelving poetry books when she approached me for the first time. "Do you like poetry?" she asked, holding out a slim book with a pastel cover. Her fingers brushed the edge of the page. "This one feels like hugging warm air," she said. "It's comforting in a way I can't explain." I froze. Not because the question was complicated, but because no one, literally no one, had ever spoken to me with that kind of warmth before. For a moment, I couldn't find my voice. I stared like an idiot until she offered a small, encouraging smile. "It's okay if you're not into it," she said gently. "I just thought I'd ask." I managed to nod. She thanked me, bought the book, and left the store. But the moment replayed in my mind for days. The way she tucked a piece of hair behind her ear when she talked. The slight tilt of her head when she listened. The softness in her voice when she said the word comforting. I didn't know it then, but I was already slipping, sliding into a fantasy strong enough to anchor itself into every quiet, lonely place inside me. Because the truth is, before Maya, my life felt like background noise. I wasn't close to anyone. Not my coworkers. Not my family. Not anyone. Most people didn't remember my name even after months of working with them. I was just there. A placeholder. A ghost with a name tag. So when she noticed me, even for a second, even over something as simple as poetry, it felt like getting oxygen for the first time after years of breathing underwater. I told myself it was harmless to think about her. Harmless to replay that interaction when I lay awake at night in my too-quiet apartment. Harmless to imagine what it might be like if she looked at me again with that same warm curiosity. But fantasies are gentle liars. They make small obsessions feel like destiny. It started with coincidence. Or at least, that's what I told myself at the time. She walked past the bookstore almost every day at the same hour. I'd catch glimpses of her through the window while I restocked the front table. The way she walked, the way she checked her phone, the way she stopped to pet strangers' dogs, every detail stitched itself into my mind whether I wanted it to or not. Then I started lingering near the window more often. Just in case she passed by. Just in case she looked in. Just in case our eyes met again. I told myself it didn't mean anything. But then, I wanted more. I wanted to know where she was going after she passed the store. I wanted to know where she lived. I wanted to know what made her smile like that. I began taking my lunch break at the same time she left her office building down the street. I'd sit on a bench with a sandwich I barely tasted, watching her walk out with coworkers, always laughing with them, always lighting up the space they occupied. And that's when I saw him for the first time. Adrian. Tall, easygoing, the kind of guy people naturally gravitated toward. He walked beside her like he belonged there, like he'd been part of her world long before I even noticed her. The way she looked at him, the brightness in her eyes, the comfort, hit me like a punch to the ribs. I told myself it wasn't jealousy. I told myself I was just paying attention. But jealousy is a quiet poison. It doesn't feel like anger at first. It feels like hunger. Like something missing. Soon I started following them from a distance: restaurants, coffee shops, the little bookstore she loved down the street, her apartment building. Every time I did it, I told myself I wasn't stalking her. I was protecting her. Watching over her. Making sure she got home safe. I built entire narratives in my mind where I was the quiet hero in her story. "I'm just looking out for her," I whispered to myself during those long walks. She probably appreciates it, even if she doesn't know it. She just hasn't gotten the chance to know me yet. But none of that was love. It was fixation disguised as devotion. Obsession wearing the mask of care. And every day, the mask slipped a little more. The first time I heard her voice tremble with fear, I should have stopped. But I didn't. I overheard her talking to Adrian one afternoon outside her office. "I feel crazy saying this," she said, her voice tight, "but I think someone's been watching me. I keep seeing the same face. Or maybe I'm imagining it." My entire body froze. Her fear should have shattered me. But instead, something darker twisted inside me. She was noticing me. I mistook awareness for connection. Recognition for meaning. Instead of backing off, I took it as a sign, proof that fate was pushing our lives together. So I made fake profiles. Friendly ones. Funny ones. Ones that complimented the book she read. Anonymous messages telling her she deserves someone who truly saw her. When she smiled at her phone while reading one of them at a cafe, I convinced myself she was smiling at me. But she wasn't. She never was. Then came the night I crossed the line I could never uncross. She stayed late at work. The city felt quieter than usual, one of those nights where even the streetlights buzz softly, like they're afraid to break the silence. I walked behind her at a distance, footsteps echoing faintly down the narrow street. She didn't look back, didn't sense me. Not yet. She reached her apartment building and began searching her bag for her keys. She always struggled finding them. She carried too much, little pieces of her life stuffed into every pocket. I stepped closer. Just one step. Just close enough to see the outline of her hair in the dim light. Close enough to hear her soft sigh. Close enough to imagine what it might feel like if she turned around and smiled the way she did that first day. Then I heard my name, Ethan. My stomach dropped. I turned. Liam, my coworker from the bookstore, was standing at the end of the hallway, holding a bag of groceries, frozen in confusion. He lived in the same building. His gaze flicked from me to Maya. Then back to me. I watched realization hit his face like a slow, heavy punch. "Why are you here?" he asked carefully. He didn't need the answer. He already knew. Maya finally turned at the sound of his voice. Her eyes locked onto mine. And in that single instant, everything shattered. Her breath caught. Her shoulders stiffened. Her keys slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. "Stop," she whispered, stepping back. "Please. Stop following me." Liam moved in front of her like a shield, his jaw clenched. "I'm calling the police," he said, pulling out his phone without hesitation. And I just stood there, frozen, caught somewhere between denial and horror, realizing too late that the person I believed myself to be wasn't the person she saw. And the person she saw? She was right to be afraid of him. The police arrived faster than I expected. Maybe Liam had already dialed before he even spoke, or maybe the officers just happened to be nearby. All I know is that within minutes, flashing blue lights washed over the hallway walls, making everything feel colder, harsher, too real to escape from. Two officers approached me. One stood between Maya and Liam, blocking their view of me, as if I might lunge at them. The other questioned me, firm but controlled, like he'd done this 1,000 times. "What's your relationship to the woman?" His words punched through me. Relationship. There was none. But in my head, I had created one so vividly that answering him felt like tearing open a wound. I know her from the bookstore," I said shakily. "Do you have her address?" "No." "Do you live here?" "No." "Then why are you in this building?" My throat tightened. My voice came out thin. "I was making sure she got home safe." The officer's expression darkened. "Sir, that's not your job. She didn't ask you to do that. Do you understand how serious this is?" Behind him, Maya clung to the officer standing near her, shaking. She wasn't crying, but the fear in her eyes carved itself permanently into my memory. Not anger. Not hatred, fear. Of me. Of what I had become in her life. "I didn't mean to scare her," I whispered. Meaningless words. Pathetic words. Words that did nothing to erase what had already been done. The officers didn't arrest me, but they made it painfully clear what would happen if I ever came near her again. They escorted me out of the building, one walking ahead of me, one behind, as though I might attempt something desperate. Outside, the cold night air felt like punishment. One of the officers handed me a written warning and said, "This is the last time you get to walk away without cuffs. Do not come back here. Do not contact her. Do you understand?" I nodded, unable to speak. The moment they left, everything inside me collapsed. My legs gave out and I sat on the curb, head buried in my hands, feeling the weight of every choice I had made. All the excuses I used to soften the truth. I'm protecting her. She just doesn't know me yet crumbled like fragile illusions. I wasn't protecting her. I was tormenting her. I wasn't building a connection. I was violating boundaries she never even had a chance to set. And the worst part, I didn't stop thinking about her even then. The obsession didn't vanish in one night. It twisted itself into something darker: regret, self-loathing, and a painful craving for the fantasy I had destroyed with my own hands. The next morning, everything began to fall apart. My boss called me into her office as soon as I arrived at the bookstore. She didn't waste time, Ethan. I got a call last night. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp with concern. From who? I asked, though deep down I already knew. He told me what happened. About Maya. About the police. I swallowed hard. This is serious. And we can't risk customers or employees feeling unsafe. She folded her hands. I have to let you go. The bookstore had always been the only place where I felt like I mattered, even a little. The one place where routine gave me comfort. Losing it felt like losing the last piece of a life I had already fractured. I packed my things in silence, avoiding the stares of coworkers whispering behind the shelves. I could feel their judgment like needles in my back. They had always overlooked me. Now they were finally seeing me, but only as something dangerous. Liam didn't show up that morning. Maybe he couldn't face the tension, or maybe he had already decided I wasn't someone he wanted to share space with anymore. Either way, I packed the last of my belongings and left without saying goodbye to anyone. The eviction notice came 3 days later. My landlord knocked on my door, an apologetic look on his face. Ethan. I heard from the police. The building owner doesn't want problems. I'm sorry. Everyone was sorry. But none of it changed anything. I had 30 days to move out. My parents found out shortly after. My mother cried on the phone. Not out of anger, but disappointment, confusion, heartbreak. My father didn't speak at all. I could hear him breathing, heavy and tired, like he was mourning something. They asked if I was dangerous. They asked if they had done something wrong. I didn't have the courage to tell them that their son had let loneliness mutate into obsession, that I had mistaken a kind smile for destiny, that I had crossed boundaries I didn't even understand existed. So I said nothing. And silence was worse than any confession. Friends? I didn't have many to begin with. But the ones I had, distant acquaintances, old schoolmates, people from online groups, slowly stopped responding to my messages. Word travels fast, especially when fear is involved. No one wanted to be associated with the guy who followed a girl home. I started avoiding going outside. The humiliation felt too heavy. Walking down the street felt like walking through fog made of shame. Every passing glance felt like an accusation. I slept poorly. Ate rarely. Spent hours staring at the ceiling, trapped in the same looping question. Why did I do it? Why couldn't I stop myself? Why did I confuse attention with affection? Why did I ruin the only glimpse of connection I had ever felt? Weeks passed. I thought I wouldn't see her again. Honestly, I shouldn't have. But fate is cruel sometimes, especially when it wants to show you exactly what you destroyed. I ran into her at a weekend market after almost a month. I was there because my therapist said I needed to get out more. She gave me small goals: go to a park, visit a market, make 3 minutes of small talk with a stranger. I didn't expect her smile to be so bright when she picked out flowers from a booth. I didn't expect Adrian to be standing beside her, leaning close as he helped her choose. I didn't expect any of it. But the moment she saw me, everything froze. Her eyes widened with dread. She instinctively stepped behind Adrian, clutching the small bouquet of white flowers to her chest like a shield. She didn't scream. Didn't confront me. Didn't say a word. But the look she gave me, it wasn't disgust. It wasn't hatred. It was disappointment. A quiet, deep heartbreak that silently asked, "How could you?" It hit harder than anger ever could. Because anger meant she saw me as a villain. But disappointment meant she once saw me as human. Someone capable of better. Someone who had a choice. And I threw it away. I left the market immediately, heart pounding, lungs tight, feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my life. That night was the first time I wrote in the journal my therapist gave me. She said writing helped externalize thoughts. Help turn chaos into something you could point to and say, this is real. This is what I need to face. But the truth was, I didn't want to face anything. I wanted to disappear. To erase myself from the story entirely. To become the ghost I always thought I was. But ghosts don't hurt people. People do. And I had hurt someone who didn't deserve any of it. I wrote an apology letter. Pages and pages of everything I wished I could say to Maya. But I didn't send it. I legally couldn't, and morally shouldn't. It wasn't for her. It was for me. A confession to myself. A reminder of what obsession looks like when it rots a life from the inside. The next morning, I folded the letter and placed it in the back of the journal. My therapist told me healing wasn't about forgetting what I'd done. It was about understanding it so deeply that I would never allow myself to become that person again. And for the first time, I believed her. Therapy wasn't something I ever imagined myself needing. I always thought therapy was for people dealing with visible wounds, loss, trauma, grief. I never considered that the quiet empty spaces inside me might count as something broken. But the court order required it, and for the first few sessions, I sat there with my arms crossed, defensive and bitter, convinced no one could possibly understand how everything had spiraled so quickly. My therapist, Dr. Rowan, didn't judge me. She didn't flinch when I told the truth in pieces, fragmented like broken glass. Instead, she listened. Really listened. She had this steady way of speaking, like she was anchoring me back into reality every time my thoughts drifted into shame. One session, after I spent nearly 20 minutes rambling about how Maya's kindness had meant something, how it felt like destiny, I finally ran out of excuses and sat there in silence. She looked at me calmly and said, "You weren't in love with her, Ethan. You were in love with the idea that someone like her could fix the parts of you you've been avoiding your entire life." I felt something in my chest splinter. "You built a version of her in your mind," she continued. "A version who already understood you, already accepted you, already loved you. But that wasn't Maya. That was loneliness wearing her face." Her words shouldn't have made sense. They should have made me defensive. But instead, they settled into me like heavy truth. Because deep down, even at my worst, I knew she was right. I wasn't chasing Maya. I was chasing an idea. A fantasy. Something safe and impossible, because real relationships require vulnerability, communication, boundaries, things I had never learned how to navigate. Dr. Rowan didn't excuse what I'd done. She didn't minimize it. But she did something no one else had done since everything fell apart. She gave me a path forward. Not forgiveness. Not redemption. Just a direction. Healing didn't look like I expected. It didn't feel cinematic or transformative. It felt slow, uncomfortable, humbling. Most days, it meant confronting patterns I had buried for years. The isolation. The fear of rejection. The belief that being unnoticed meant being unworthy. I started learning how to sit with discomfort instead of escaping into fantasies. I learned how to build habits, small ones at first, that grounded me in reality. Waking up early. Keeping the apartment clean. Talking to strangers at the cafe without imagining my entire future with them. I joined a book club. Started volunteering twice a month. Made 2 real friends, people who liked me not because I hid behind a facade, but because I was honest about who I was and what I was working through. For the first time in my life, connection didn't feel like something fragile or imaginary. It felt mutual, earned, healthy. Months passed. Then a year. I moved to a different city and got a new job at a community library, part-time at first, then full-time. I didn't mention my past to anyone, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I had learned to separate who I used to be from who I was becoming. Every day, I reminded myself that healing wasn't a straight line. Some days, I felt proud. Other days, I woke up with a heavy reminder of what I had done. But shame wasn't a prison anymore. It was a compass, pointing me away from the man I used to be. One rainy afternoon, I walked into a cafe to escape the weather. A girl around my age asked if she could share my table. There were no other seats available. A year ago, I would have spiraled into fantasy within seconds, imagining invisible possibilities. Now, I simply nodded and said, "Sure." We talked casually about the weather, her spilled coffee, the book she was reading. Just a normal conversation. No projections. No illusions. Before she left, she smiled and said, "You're easy to talk to. Hope I'll see you around." And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something warm. Not obsessive. Not consuming. Just warm. A tiny spark of something healthy. Something real. I didn't chase it. I didn't build a story out of it. I just let it be what it was. A pleasant moment. A moment I didn't twist into a fantasy. And that was enough. But the final piece, the closure I didn't know I needed, came unexpectedly. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was returning books to the library Dropbox when I saw a familiar face across the street, Maya. She was standing outside a flower shop, holding a small bouquet of yellow tulips, laughing softly at something on her phone. She looked okay. More than okay. She looked happy, healthy. Healing in her own way. She didn't see me. I didn't let her. I stepped back behind a parked car, heart pounding for reasons that felt different now. Not fear. Not longing. Not obsession. Just the heavy realization of how far I had come. And how far I had once fallen. For a moment, I watched her, not the way I used to, not with fantasies clinging to the edges of my thoughts, but with quiet gratitude. Gratitude that she was safe. Gratitude that she had moved on. Gratitude that I had finally learned what love wasn't, even if it took breaking myself open to understand it. I whispered, "I'm sorry." Not because I wanted her forgiveness, but because I needed to acknowledge the truth of who I had been. Then I turned away and walked in the opposite direction. Not because I was afraid, but because it was the right thing to do. The truth is, Maya never loved me. She never should have. And thank God she didn't, because the person I was back then didn't deserve someone like her. But the person I am now. He respects her enough to stay away. He respects himself enough to live differently. He understands that love is not built from longing in the dark or fantasies whispering lies. Love isn't earned through persistence, or proven through suffering, or justified by loneliness. Love requires consent, boundaries, presence, honesty. And obsession, no matter how poetic it sounds in the mind, is not love. It is hunger. It is fear. It is the shadow of connection, not the real thing. People say that obsession crumbles when confronted with truth. They're wrong. Obsession doesn't crumble, it rots, silently, until everything around it falls apart. But accountability survives. It grows roots. It anchors you to who you want to become instead of who you were. And that anchor is what saved me. The day my obsession destroyed everything was the worst day of my life. But it was also the day I finally understood that destruction can be a doorway, not to redemption, but to responsibility. To growth. To becoming someone who doesn't need fantasies to feel real. Someone who doesn't confuse a smile with destiny. Someone who can love without losing himself. Someone who can let go. Someone who can start again. And I have. Quietly, slowly, honestly. One step at a time. Because in the end, obsession breaks. Fantasy burns. Illusions fade. But dignity, the dignity you rebuild from the ashes, that survives.